My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hey guys, it's time for another episode of 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk. And just a quick reminder, if you aren't part of our community, hop over to Facebook, whether you love it or hate it. Come over, get in the community. Let's play together. Let's talk about things that happen after, before, and maybe ideas, for 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk, the podcast. But I'm happy to have you here because guess what? We are going to get all sexy. We're going to talk sex. We're going to talk erotic stuff. We're going to talk, all these things. I think we're going to even maybe talk about some bond stuff, like that bondage stuff, but a different twist on it. And why are we doing this? Because these are the things we as gay men don't seem to talk about enough. Now, some of you are going, I talk about it all the time. Okay, fine. You're a little whoremonger. That's fine too. But for most of us, we don't talk about this in the really healthy, beautiful ways that we could. And how, as we do these conversations and step more into our embodiment of passion and sex and arousal and all that sort of stuff, that it actually makes us better men. And you guys, I know, love these when we have these episodes. So I want you to get your hard-ons on right now. Just get ready to have a really good time. I've got a great guest today. He is a sexologist. He's a certified erotic blueprint expert. I'm going to take the other word away because he and I already talked about that. He is an expert, but he's a coach. I'm just saying he's a coach. But he's a gay trans man who is bringing his work, his beautiful self to this world. And I thought, what better way to let's just really have a good talk about sex and all that beautiful stuff. Welcome, Ayce Kyptyn, to the podcast. And I am so blessed to have you here, man. And thank you for being willing to come chat with us.
Yeah, man. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. And, I've had a lot of people in our trans brother and sister world on, but when I saw you and you wanting to come talk about this, and then of course, I know your work, we've been talking pre-podcast about the work that you do with Miss Jaya with the erotic blueprint. I was like, I can't wait to get a trans man's perspective who identifies as gay into this conversation, because I think it's so necessary to have these conversations. So let's get down, let's get dirty, let's get naked about all this stuff. So what brought you to the work, man? I'm just really curious about that.
Yeah, so my story is pretty wild. My tagline is actually from missionary. So I was a Christian missionary to missionary and beyond in the bedroom. So I went from having a very repressed sex life to having a very erotically liberated sex life. And that's my goal in helping clients do the same thing. So, yeah.
That's so important. I mean, I came from a really restrictive, Christian background too. And, it's all hell damnation. You can't be this, shouldn't be doing all that. And I felt that same thing, that liberation. I'm going to be honest, the first few times that I was, cheating on my wife, just getting my rocks off with guys, it didn't feel good, never did really feel good. I'm never going to say that. But there was always this liberation. And then when I realized, okay, sex is a beautiful thing. Erotic stuff is very beautiful. Self-pleasure is an amazing thing. My whole world began to change.
Right.
And so for you, where did this really start showing up? I mean, you came into that space of Christian, very restrictive, all this sort of stuff. But then there's also the interesting piece of your own journey as a trans individual and into being your truest self. Was that erotic piece always like, ooh, it's here, but it's so, it's so constrained. But then you tie it, which is where I'm going to say this is where most people really fuck up these conversations. Well, but how are you trans and gay? That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to you. It has to make sense to the person who it is. So there's got to be some colliding of all of this kind of showed up in your melting pot of your world. So wherever you want to take us on that journey, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, man. So I grew up believing that I was bad, broken, sinful. And I had that deeply ingrained in me, indoctrinated into me because of my religion, because of the political area that I was in. I was in a really conservative space. And I learned to abandon myself at a really young age. So I started to show that I was trans probably around the age of 4. I mean, my parents noticed it really early on. I liked boy things. I didn't want to wear dresses. All my friends were boys. I didn't have any girlfriends. I was playing in the mud. I was doing, just whatever a typical boy would do at a really
Yep.
young age. That's what I was doing. And so at home, I could do that. I could be myself. I could go out and have fun on the farm. I could get dirty. But then when I went out, I had to present more in my feminine side, and I had to like wear dresses and sit prim and proper and just hold the standard for our family, right? Of like, this is who we are. We're the stereotypical Christian white family. And so I just really learned to abandon my own desires at a very, very young age. And what that ended up doing was it ended up making me repress who I truly was. And so I know you identify with this as well, being a gay guy, growing up as a kid in your high school years, your college years, you probably repressed a ton of your desires, right?
Oh no, I was perfect all the way through. I no, none of that ever happened. I was just, no, you're right. It sucked. It sucked and not in a good
Yeah.
way. I mean, it was just like the constant, like, check a guy out, but like, make sure you don't, I mean, just all of those things. And,
Yeah.
it's interesting because now when I talk to high school friends that I know, they're like, well, we kind of knew. And I'm like,
Right.
yes, but that was back. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1981. So we're talking,
Hmm.
late 70s, early 80s. And it was not cool to be that, even worse than it was, yes, let's go back to the 30s, 40s, 50s, that, and beyond. But it was at that really interesting space where like Boy George was starting to hit the scene. So there was that pushing it. Cyndi Lauper was pushing the envelopes. So there was a lot of pushing envelopes going on.
Hmm.
But it was like, well, that's entertainment, that happens only in those worlds. And I remember really having a huge crush on like a guy that was my best friend now, not near, because he happens to have
Yeah.
he's gone to the red hat side of the world. So let's just go there.
Okay.
But he
Mm.
turned me on. He totally turned me on.
Mm.
But I was
Hmm.
like, I now know that friendship was my way of being able to be close to something that just I really desired.
Oh,
Now I go,
yeah.
I wouldn't, in my now grown up 60, soon to be, well, I'm now 61-year-old mind. I look back at that and go, I would never have been friends with somebody like that. That's just not who I am. But life happens,
Mm.
right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen this
Hmm.
through your own journey and transition that, who
Yeah.
you were and how you now show up and who you become. Although I will
Hmm.
say he is the cause of my like fascination with men with nice furry chests. I mean, I'm just going to blame him for that one. It's just
Gotta
what
love
it
those
is.
fantasies. Gotta
Yes, you
love it.
do.
There's
Mhm.
something there for you to develop in, your own mental health journey and unpacking those fantasies, which that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah,
Right. But there's
I
there's
get
this
it.
interesting piece, Ace, that I'm sure you've been there, where as you begin to see yourself and realize, okay, I don't have to hold on to that belief system. I don't have to buy into that belief system, which
Mm.
isn't easy.
Hmm.
All these guys
Yeah.
listening, we've all been down the road. Some guys are just
Yep.
going down this road, right? But as
Yep.
you
Yep.
unpack that, like,
Absolutely.
I don't have to be there, what would you say? And I'm not trying to do the chicken before the egg sort of thing, but was
Hmm.
like the identity of your trans self, this awakening of your erotic self, was it like all kind of happening simultaneously, or was there moments like, okay, well, the trans piece is going to come, and then suddenly here I am, in my young
Yeah.
teenage life going, well, I guess I'm kind of a girl boy, but I'm more attracted to men.
Yeah, yeah. So that whole development happened really quickly for me. So I repressed it for such a long time because it wasn't something that I could express. In
Mhm.
the circles that I was in, it was just unacceptable and it was sinful. And so I needed to figure that piece out. What ended up happening in my life is I was let go from a position because they restructured. And
Okay.
it totally shocked me. It came out of left field. I wasn't expecting it to happen. I had just gotten a bunch of raises and promotions, and then all of a sudden I was let go. And from that, my life did a tailspin, and I basically lost everything. So there was a ton of physical discomfort, there was a ton of social discomfort, and there was a ton of mental discomfort in this space. And what happened was I needed to process, okay, how did I get here? My life has completely fallen apart. Something that I built for, 38 years
Mm.
no longer exists. It is gone. It vanished overnight.
Ouch.
And who am I now? Who do I want to be? And out of that came a really deep inquiry around my gender, orientation, identity, and expression. And so what I did was I hired a bunch of professionals and I said, I need help. I don't know who I am. I know aspects of who I am, but I am so confused right now. And I am hurting and I am deeply alone. And those professionals came into the room and they held space for me to show my authentic self. And so it didn't matter who I was, what fantasies I had, what desires I had, all of me could exist in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, I realized, fuck, I'm trans and I'm gay. And that's not a bad thing. It's okay. There's nothing bad, sinful, broken about me, right? I can be exactly who I am and I can thrive in that space. And so what that did was it gave me a couple years to land back on my feet and really get the perspective from people who understand these, situations to a much deeper degree than anybody that I had met before. I mean, the reality is I ended up on a therapist's couch, a complete stranger, and I'm pouring out my heart and my soul to her like, these are my desires, these are my feelings. I don't know if I can have them, but I have them. And she's like, they fucking exist. Like, just wake up to that reality that like you don't need to repress that. It's there. So let's deal with it.
Right.
And as I was sitting across the couch from her, she goes, Ace, you're not straight. And at that point in time, I was still using my dead name, but she goes, you're not straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, yeah, I am. I like men. Like it totally like went over my head. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, you're not straight. And I was like, yep, all right, I'm trans.
Mm-hmm.
And like that whole piece of me finally was just like, like I can exist exactly as I am. And
What a
that's
sigh of
really what
relief.
catapulted my journey.
Yeah, that's got to be a
Right.
huge sigh of relief. Like, and I think each of us in our own LGBTQ plus journeys have had those moments
Hmm.
when it finally hits, right? I mean, one of the first for me
Yes.
was after all the years of cheating on my wife, ex-wife now,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
many trysts I had. The first time I was with a guy after coming out, it was so strange because it's like, oh,
Hmm.
wait, I don't have to hide this. I get to be fully in it. I also get to be the little schoolgirl, like,
Hmm.
oh, it's him. I found Mr. Man. First fuck after coming out. I'm like, oh, there's Prince Charming, which wasn't what it was at all. But anyway,
Not at all.
but it was such an interesting transition to like, I wasn't prepared for that. I was like, oh, I've been doing
Mm.
this, having sex with a guy. But this time,
Mm.
yes, it was, quote, a random guy that I didn't really know, but
Mhm.
I didn't have to hide anything. I got to go do
Yes.
this on my own time. I got to like go, hey, if he wants to spend the night, he can. If I wanted
Mhm.
to spend the night, I could, because now there wasn't, okay, hurry, get this done, zip up the pants, clean yourself off, make sure everything's put back together, get in the car, go home, put the mask on. Hey, here's dad. Dad's home. Hubby's home. I was just like, oh, I don't have to do that
Yes.
anymore.
Ah,
Such a big relief.
absolutely.
So I'm sure for you, as that liberation came through, not only as I'm no longer this person,
Mhm.
this is who I truly am. And now I'm stepping fully into my masculine trans male self. I'm going to say that one
Yes.
time, folks, because I don't feel like that's how we define for guys like Ace. He's a guy.
Mhm.
This is who he's always been. It just took a little longer, 38 years to get there, right?
Absolutely.
It took me 36 years to get to the place where I admit I'm a gay guy. I knew it
Mm-hmm.
all along, but to finally embrace it. But there
Yeah.
has to be that moment when you really like step into it and you are like, okay, so now what am I capable of doing next? Now, what do I desire to be? And I think that's where, I think the rest of the story starts to come in. Like,
Absolutely.
how did you then get into, I'm going to be, I'm going to look at sexuality and sexology and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say I was just watching porn one day and decided this is what I'm going to do, I'm just going to slap the shit out of you right now. But
No. So the reality is that was the very first time in my life that someone asked, acknowledged, and accepted who I was. And so what that did was it gave me a space to process it. And as I was starting the healing process, I was watching Netflix. I think we all do this. We all kind of like just numb out on TV, right? As we're
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, something big just happened. And now I'm just going to sit back and just kind of numb myself out. And I ended up scrolling upon Sex, Love, and Goop with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yep.
And that show was transformational for me because I had just gone through incredibly deep pain, probably some of the deepest pain anybody could go through. And I was trying to figure out, how do I transmute that pain into something more? And what I saw on this show was a transmutation of pain into pleasure. What happens is people get on a table with my mentor, Jaya, and Jaya holds a very safe space for all of them to exist on this table. And she goes through an exercise with them. It's called body mapping, where they lay on a table and the only goal is to find out what type of pleasure do you have in your body? Where does that exist? And so we all have those stereotypical places that we think are pleasurable for us, right? The sexual erogenous zones, right? But what this really does is it drops you into your body and it truly identifies, without the mind having a play in it, what is your body sensations that you're experiencing and what do you enjoy and what do you not enjoy? And so as she goes through this exercise, you can see in real life on TV, clients having this awakening of like, holy shit, how do I experience that in my body? Right. And it's just like, it was mind blowing to me. And at that moment, I was like, I need that in my life. Like I've lived so numbed out and I've done everything that the society tells me to do, and I'm not finding pleasure. And I want that. And so I hired a sex coach. I flew out to their house in Colorado and I had an in-person immersion with a professional sexologist. And in that, it was a 3-day immersion. I had this awakening that was just absolutely mind-blowing, where I finally landed in my body and I knew what felt good to me. Not what felt good to everybody else and not what everybody else is doing, but what is my body like? And what is a turn on to me? And how can I experience even more pleasure in my life? And so that right there was the catalyst to me becoming a sex coach and saying, hey, man, I experienced this in my life and it's absolutely transformational. I want everybody else to experience it as well.
And it's such a beautiful thing when we give ourselves permission to say, this is what I enjoy and this is what I experience.
Yeah.
Because we suddenly break the mold. We break the mold of like, here's what you're supposed to do. I mean, in this crazy day and age where Project 2025 is trying to say, hey, sex isn't going to be for pleasure anymore. I'm like, yeah, fuck you. Every one of you writing this book enjoys sex too. So go screw yourselves. No, don't go screw.
Absolutely.
I don't want you to have that pleasure. Okay. But I remember watching that show too. And it really awakened. So, we do have, you and I have already talked about this. We do have the commonality. I have the sexual blueprint course that I play with and dabble in. I thought about becoming one of the coaches. Ayce is convinced he's going to convince me I'm going to become one by the time this podcast's over, which I would love to. I just don't, the bandwidth isn't there. But there is such this beautiful space that when we grant ourselves permission to truly be a sexual erotic being.
Yes.
And we do it every day. We are all sexual erotic beings in some of our simplest things. If you could see what I'm doing on camera right now, even what I'm doing with my hands, no, they're not in my crotch jerking myself off. So guys, get that out of your mind, okay? But even the way I'm moving my hands is kind of an erotic way of movement. And I am one of those people who I really try to embody like what's bringing me pleasure, like in everyday stuff too. Like there's there are times when I just want to, I literally will reach my arms one at a time, straight up over my head. And I love just stroking the inner part of my arm because it calms me down. It, in an interesting way, it feels very erotic. I'm doing it on camera right now. Ayce can see it. I'm not making this stuff up. And it relaxes me. It brings me pleasure. It gives me those little goosebumps. Like when I'm having a really stressful day, and if I can't get away to do something, not talking about going in the bedroom and jerking off, I'll do that every once in a while too. But just that simple, like touch and feel myself. And I remember watching the show and just some of the simple touching and stuff that was happening, the feathers, some of the stuff that gets used to like awaken. I'm having goosebumps right now just talking about it, Ayce, because I remember those moments. My husband and I were watching this and we're like, oh, wow. And not that we're by no stretch of the imagination, like boring old gay men, but there were things that we brought into our world. Like, okay, let's try this. Let's see. Like, I remember finally asking him, like, does this feel good? And I can't remember last time I asked him that question. And that's only the beginning of the work. I mean, I believe, and you can give us much more insight, Ayce. I believe it starts with you getting in touch with your own sexual energy and sexuality and all of this in a really deep way before you can truly experience the pleasure and that piece of being with another person.
Yeah. I mean, it's so complicated, but it's also so simple. I think what happens is in our world today, we all learn to live in the sexual blueprint. We have a horrible sex education, but we just learn, oh, hey, this is how we do it. You stick 2 and 2 together and you have some fun, whatever. And what the erotic blueprints did to me was it gave me this framework of like, not all of us are sexuals. Not all of us want to go 0 to 60 super fast and just like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, I'm done. Like some of us need to have time to drop into our bodies. Some of us need to have time to, make sure that the senses in the room are engaged and that, the smell is right or the atmosphere is right or, it's clean, things like that. Or some of us need to have a kinky experience to really drop us in and get us, psychologically engaged. Like there are so many different aspects that we can come at sexuality with. We don't have to just do the same old thing because everybody else does it. We can do what our bodies truly desire, what we personally crave and really want. I mean, a lot of us, we just want to be deeply loved and we also want to love someone. But maybe some of us just want to have a one-off experience of, something super kinky because that's a fantasy. All of that can exist. And so there's so many options out there. We don't need to just keep doing the same old. Like, let's explore, let's get curious, and let's have a little bit of fun with this. And that's where the real growth and development comes in your sexuality and what I believe.
Yeah. Well, and I believe too that the constraints that we've been given by how we've been, quote, sexualized into humanity is one of the hardest things to break free of too. And I am a very big advocate of porn. I think porn has a very big place in who we are as humanity. Some people would disagree with that. Fine. I'm glad for you to disagree on that. However, I will also say, having interviewed quite a few porn stars, done some men's retreats where I was with some porn stars, even porn contributes to why we are so screwed up in our sexuality and gender, because it's all about bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
I do not enjoy a guy banging my ass that hard. I'm just going to be honest. It's not enjoyable. It's not pleasurable. And I'm not a bottom per se most of the time. So nor am I a top that's like bang, 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 bang. I am a sensual. There's got to be more to it. If a guy says they're not into kissing, we're not going to do well. We're just not going to do well. That's not going to happen. And it's so funny when, a guy will say, but, don't you like my ass? Yeah, I do like your ass. I think it's a really beautiful ass. But if I don't get to kiss you, that doesn't do it for me, and I think it's an interesting thing when you start owning what brings you alive. And I'm only touching the surface of this.
Absolutely.
It changes everything. And it is hard for us as gay men to express, because the problem is, and this, having done the work, that just admitting what you want as a man is just the beginning of getting comfortable. Whether you want a new job, whether you want to not have to carry the whole family, like, you know, I don't want to be the main breadwinner. If you don't really want to go drinking, but all the buddies are going, come on, let's go drink, let's go to the strip joint, you know, to admit you don't want to do something. I can't remember the movie we were watching last night, but it was about a young Black man who went to the military just to please his mother because she couldn't accept him as gay. And there's so much beautiful, you know, story in that story about what he had to do and just the whole depiction of military boot camp life. It's like, it is so masculine oriented to like, this is what you have to do to be a man. Yet when those vulnerable moments show up throughout the movie where you can see the different characters breaking like against the standard of what it means to be a man. And I think the beauty of what you bring into this conversation is you bring your trans self into it as your trans manhood. And for many guys, just to be able to like understand that piece is such a journey. So I'm sure to accept yourself as a man has been a journey in and of itself, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's still a journey. I mean, I'm only a few years into this. I
We've
just
had a few.
a
You should
meal
be over it, man. You've had a few years. Get over it. Be done. Okay.
Yeah, right. I wish it was like that. I just had a meal the other day with 4 men, and as we were engaging in conversation, um, their masculine came out very presently, and it was alpha male, like, "Hey, I'm gonna one up you. I'm gonna one up you, one up you." And in that moment, my feminine came out, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's weird," because I haven't touched the feminine in a while, right? And it was just a really interesting awakening to me of like, how can I be a little fluid with that? Because I think that there needs to be a balance of some sort with between the masculine and the feminine. We have to be able to play with those. We can't deny certain aspects of us that are truly us, right? I think that's just a part of being healthy. But it's a part of my journey right now of like, okay, like I present masculine. Most people don't know that I'm trans. If you run into me in public, you don't think, oh, that's a trans person. You think, oh, that's just another guy, right? But in my day-to-day life, I'm constantly reminded, like, okay, am I masculine? Am I feminine? How am I presenting to the world? What do I want to present to the world? How do I want to show up? And it's been such a fun journey of just being authentically myself and being able to just show up as me. I'm Ayce. So yeah, I'm trans masculine, but the reality is I am who I am and I'm Ayce. It's a fun space to play in now.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Okay, I'm going to stop for a minute, Ayce, because my earphones are dying.
Yes.
So let me switch the earphones.
Good.
That way I can make sure we can finish hearing the rest of this. So hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, can you say something?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're back.
Awesome.
So I'm going to give it just a pause and then we'll pick back up.
Okay, cool. And one thing is I can add on to what I just was saying. So
okay,
I don't know how it will work, but
you were kind of talking about that, finding your true self and being your, finding your masculine trans self in it. So I'll kind of pick up from there because I wrote that down. See, I'm good at this. I write
you've
shit
done
down.
This before.
Yeah, this pony's ridden this a few times. So Ayce, one of the things you just said that really, first it tugged my heart because as a gay man, the first thing that I always had to question was my masculinity. Like, okay, if because of this. And then when you said your trans masculine self, I'm like, oh, he just grabbed my heart in a big way, because that's a piece to embrace right there. Because born assigned birth female, but yet this masculine part of yourself from being on the farm, playing in the mud, all that sort of stuff, suddenly everybody's like, yeah, that's the box. This means they're that, Ace, the tomboy, right? But it goes well beyond that. So just that transformation for you to be able to say my masculine trans self, that is a beautiful part of this journey, because you accepting your masculine self had to be, you could see the manifestation of, who you are now. So many of my trans friends, like, I could always look in the mirror and there was a vision of myself, but it wasn't what I saw in the mirror. There's this other piece of who I could really see, but physically that wasn't what was manifesting. So when you said trans masculine self, it drove home for me, even for you, that embracing of that. What does it mean for me to be masculine? And I'm sure your version of that is similar to most of us born male at birth guys, but there's a whole different transformation that happens in your mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what it was a understanding of like, I belong everywhere as I am, taking up space, right?
Yeah.
And so embodying that unconditional love for myself. And that's where the true intimacy lies, right? Unconditional love for me, from you. It's that whole piece of like, how do I land in that space where all of me can be present and I can love all of me? And so for the first time in my life, when I medically transition, I can now look in the mirror and be like, yes, it's exactly how I was supposed to be from birth. I can see something right now that I absolutely love and I feel so just congruent with. There's no longer an incongruency in my life. It all just fell into place.
I just had kind of like an Oprah moment, and maybe it's because just a week or two ago, I was listening to, I kind of play Super Soul Sunday podcasts over and over when I'm at acupuncture and meditating and stuff. Especially at acupuncture, I'm laying there like, okay, poke me, but like take me away too. So I'll listen to, to her, and she was interviewing Janet Mock, and she said something very similar, but what just like landed for me in a big way, which I'm like, okay, this is like a tweetable moment. That's what Oprah would say, is when you said, how do I land in that space where all of me can be present? This is what it's brought you to. And I just want the guys that are listening, and if there's some gals, I don't know, I have a few gals that listen to it. It's like, I have a straight girlfriend like, I love your 40 plus gay man, gay talk podcast. I learned so much from it. I'm like, okay, cool. Glad to hear that. But I think this is one of those moments, guys. How are you landing in your space where you can be all you're meant to be in your present self? If we take nothing more away from this podcast today, that right there, Ace, was worth, for me as the host, was worth every moment of getting to have you here on the podcast. Because that was a really beautiful thing to challenge us forward, to keep in mind on a daily basis, to ask ourselves that question when we're feeling at our lowest low. Okay, but how can I now land in this space to be all of me in this moment? No judgment, no shame, no guilt. This is my moment to be me. And that was a beautiful thing. So I wanted to really make sure we captured that, because so many of us as humans miss the ability to be ourselves in that moment. The first thing that comes up is judgment. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not, I'm not built enough. I'm not masculine enough. Any of those things can pop up at any of these moments. And what you just shared with us is a beautiful way to step into it and to help diminish the numbness. Because when we're really present with ourselves, there's no room for numbness. We see ourselves fully. In fact, I would say, I don't know, and I almost want to go, okay, let's go back to when you said those words. I almost want to say that even as you were saying those words, there was probably an aliveness that was within you, because there's no room for numbness. You're being very present with yourself in this moment to say those words.
Absolutely. And that is how I show up in the world today, right? a lot of times people will engage in conversation with me and they'll be like, there's something different about you. And honestly, being able to show up exactly who I am, where all of me can exist, has transformed the way that I show up in this world and engage with other humans. It's undeniable. And part of the way that I've gotten there is by living my life out of pleasure. And so you probably know this, but in Jaya's curriculum, there's an exercise that she does called pleasure first. And it's a lot of times what we realize is, like, if we go into our bodies and we try to feel what sensations arise, a lot of times it's the pain. Oh, my low back hurts, my knee hurts, whatever it may be. But if you did a body scan right now and you said, okay, where can I find just a little bit of pleasure? Maybe it's just in your pinky. Right. Maybe there's just a tiny little bit of pleasure. But can you find it, and can you amplify it, and can you make it grow? And then, we go through this exercise, and I do this on a daily basis. It's the very first thing I do when I wake up is, how can I start my day with pleasure? It might be just grabbing a piece of chocolate off the nightstand and indulging in that just for a brief moment. It might be hooking up with a guy and being like, all right, I want to get it on. It's asking your body. So not starting your day out of your mind of, hey, this is the next thing I need to do. This is the next, this is test A, B, and C that I need to do today. And you're off the ground and running. It's getting into your body and saying, oh, what does my body really want? It's starting from that space.
It could even be as simple as, the pleasure could be, today's going to be a really good day. That can bring you pleasure. Sometimes we have these words like pleasure, and immediately so many people go, oh, well, you got to get your rocks off. That's one way.
It could be, yeah.
Another way could be having a piece of chocolate for breakfast instead of, whatever. Another way could be, I derive pleasure by just going, today's going to be a really great day. Just that. And I know, guys, you're going, those are just words. Yes, they're just words, but it's amazing how, if you wake up like, oh, fuck, it's another goddamn day, versus today's going to be a really good day. Your metabolics and everything shift. Every bit of it shifts. It may be short-lived, but it shifts.
Yep.
I mean, think about this, guys. You get up in the morning, and if you're a gym rat in the morning, like, okay, it's time to go to the gym. Ah, fuck, it's time to go to the gym. Or guess what? I get to go to the gym today. You get to do this. There are people who don't get to do that. There are people who don't get to experience pleasure in bed. There are people who are afraid to have an experience with another human being because it may be a male on male relationship, a female on female, a trans, man with another gay man. They're afraid to do that because it's not part of their pleasure principles. And I would invite each and every one of you, and this was one of the main reasons that I was like really excited to have Ayce come on, because I do know Miss Jaya's work. I'm not near to the point that he is, but what are your pleasure principles that you are denying yourself from experience? And it isn't just about dick and pussy. I'm just going to put it right out there. It includes nipples. It includes a lot of things. Okay. But what is the pleasure you're denying yourself by how you talk to yourself, how you show up in the world, how you realize that actually every bit of who we are as a human being is an erotic map. And I'm not just talking about the sexual piece. When you really think about life, life is a beautiful erotic journey. And even as I said the word erotic, I started getting some goosebumps, because it's about what's the orgasms of life that you're missing out on. It's such a different way of being in the world. So any last words? I mean, man, you delivered. I mean, I have got that one thing like highlighted big time. Like, how do I land in that space where, all of me can be present and really in pleasure? That's a huge piece of this. But before we wrap up, is there any other thing that you would say, this has been one of the most beautiful things that giving myself permission first to transition to who I truly am, then finding this pathway to be this erotic spokesperson, expert. I'm not going to call you a coach, even though he is a coach. I'm going to call him an erotic expert. But what's the one thing that's maybe like really changed most for you in your life? Because you've given yourself full permission to show up in this moment in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up around a lot of intelligent people.
Mm,
I was in the room with some people that just had every degree you can name in the world. And what I have learned recently, probably in the last like 3 or 4 years, is some of the best information and advice I've ever gotten has been from a sex worker.
mm,
Because they understand humanity to a degree that no one else does. They can hold space for you and allow all of you to exist. And that is why I do what I do. Like, I found my people, the people that could hold space for me to be exactly 100% who I am. And I think in my old life before I transitioned and all of that, I think I criticized sex workers and I held this mentality of like what they're doing is bad or it's illegal or whatever, the societal norms of that.
yep.
And what I came to realize is they're doing fucking sacred work. They are able to see you exactly where you're at and help you move forward in your journey, whatever that, wherever that might be. And so my, I guess my takeaway from this is like, put yourself at tables with people that you don't know
Mm,
anything about them. They are totally different from you. And maybe you even have a judgment about them, or you might have a shame about their lifestyle, but be able to see them as a human
mm,
and hear their story and learn where they're coming from. I think that's what's going to transform this world. We need to build a bigger table so that people can pull
mhm,
up a chair and
yep.
have conversations and really truly see that we're all just humans trying to survive in this world and we want to thrive. And
Yeah.
we're not going to do that on our own, putting up these walls of saying, oh, you do this, so I'm not going to engage with you. We're going to do this in community. And when that shift happened in my life, my mind was blown, but something changed in me that I don't even know if I can describe right now. There are no words for it. It changes the way that I show up in this world and how I love other people and how I engage in society. And I think that right there is going to be the shift that our culture needs moving forward.
I agree. There's room for everybody at the table as long as we realize everybody gets a seat at the table and we all see
Hmm.
each other for the seat we hold. But when the judgment
Mm.
comes in and the change and all, all this stuff, and I'm going to just bring this up because we're recording this right after the whole, opening Olympics thing. As long as the table doesn't mean, oh, the table can only look this way. The table
Mm.
at the Olympics looked exactly the way it was meant to look based on something that was
Mm.
not what a lot of people thought it was meant to look like. And
Mhm.
as soon as we pass judgment on what the table should look like, that's when we have
Mm.
problems.
Mm.
Erotic
Yeah.
is just a word. It is just the word
Mm.
erotic. And
Yep.
all the beautiful ways that people come to the table of eroticism is what should be respected. For some, it's going to be
Mm.
downright fucking like a porn star. For others, it's going to be just looking at each other in a beautiful gaze at each other's eyes. And for
Yeah.
others, it may just be it's a word and something that doesn't do anything for me. But what we
Mm.
need to learn to do, as I feel like our community as flag bearers of liberation, is yes,
Mhm.
make room at the table, see each other, but also be strong enough to say, I'm not here to hurt you. Why are you here trying to hurt me? That's
Mm.
the bridges I think that need to get built. So,
Amen.
mm.
100%.
Ace, thank you so much for being here, man, and being you and showing up fully and sharing your journey and your story. And I feel really blessed to have had this conversation today. You're definitely somebody who's
Life.
going to have some beautiful impact in the world.
Thank you. Yes, this is life-changing work for sure.
Very good. And if any of you want to connect with Ace, all the information is out there on our website. Maybe you decide maybe he's for you. His website is Ayce Kyptyn, AYCEKYP, as in Paul, T as in Tom, N as in Nancy. I'm sorry, TY, N as in Nancy. and it will be on there. You can connect with him there. He has a 30 days with a sexologist program you might want to go check out. Not just might, you should go check it out. And you can follow him on Instagram at Ayce, AYCE _Kyptyn, KYPTYN. So thanks again, Ayce, for being here, man. Something tells me you might be back down the road. I don't know. I think that could be really fun to come back and have another conversation.
There's a lot more to talk about.
There is a lot more to talk about.
Body size on the next one.
There we go. Body size, I would love to, because we didn't even get to that. So anyway, well, thanks again, my friend. I really, truly appreciate you.
Yes, and fill your life with pleasure.
That's a wrap for 40 Plus. Gay men, gay talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40 Plus, Gay Men, Gay Talk, where the conversations continue.